Hello, and welcome to the next video of Keylligraphy ink speed painting. I am Ray. So in this video, I kind of cut out the parts where I start on a base sketch as well as doing the inking process, because for this particular art style, which I have named the character card style, which are only available on my Patreon as a reward. These take a little bit longer because I try to do a certain type of blending style with a mixture of my watercolor brushes and my color pencil brushes. And maybe one day I will do like a whole video on what brushes I have, and I'll go through all my settings and such like that so you guys can see what I do and don't have, or do and don't use, art-wise. But yeah, like I'm right now it's just going over all the base colors, making sure that the base layer, the base color layer is locked, and just losing just myself in all the coloring and the shading and the blending. This character is a OC, one of the OCs that my Patreon supporter has. And as I said in the last video, like I really do enjoy uh, coloring and doing artwork of original characters, even if they're not my own. From what I've heard about this character, he's kind of like a little bit of a trickster, um, with magical abilities. I've seen him drawn in concepts with having cards, and that's why he has floating cards around him. And he has this blonde, strawberry blonde orange hair, and typically wears a red vest and boots, and looks kind of pirate-like, but he's not a pirate, from what I've been told by the owner of this OC, so it's deceiving. I guess he has an aesthetic, which is really enjoyable. So I will be sure to leave a link to the person's Tumblr, at least, of this OC, if you guys are curious about their character or their artwork in the future. I'll be sure to do that for most of my Patreon supporters if they have a particular OC or a place where you can look them up later on if you're all curious. Unless, of course, they request not to do that, then I won't do that. But other than that, I always like to show off other people's OCs, even in my own stuff. I just, again, like, all OCs deserve a lot of love. Because, yeah, like, OCs just don't get enough love, man. You just gotta be able to share it together and enjoy OCs together. So, I'll be sure to do that. Let's see. So, moving on. Um, so yeah, just going over the whole entire thing. I tried to cut out as much of the little jitters as I possibly could when it comes to this particular art piece. It was way more rampant in this art piece than it was in the previous video. The whole zooming in and out thing that I'm guilty of. Yeah, you can see it all right there. Um, so hopefully, as I continue to do these videos, I will catch myself more often and won't do it as much. Hopefully, fingers crossed. When shading and coloring particular pieces of clothing, I try to put emphasis on more of the shading part when it comes to shading the colors of it than trying to do line art surrounding the particular wrinkles in the clothing. The reason why I do this is because it just has this kind of style to it. I'm not sure how exactly to put it, but I find it aesthetically pleasing to not have to do heavy line arts for every single bit of detail unless it's like uh, specifically called for it, like for instance, for like a piece of machinery. But when it comes to clothes, I typically avoid trying to do bits of detail for every single wrinkle in clothing, and I rely more on my ability to paint and shade the colors. As you can kind of see from the shirt there, I try to block out shapes and forms with my colors before blending it together. And this creates really crisp lines, especially in things like clothing, where they have a particular texture to them. And I use white highlights or a brighter color highlight for any particular parts that's supposed to be like pointed, because that just brings it out just a little bit more. What else? Picking colors. Okay, so when picking colors, it's good to make sure that you are paying attention to your color wheel. I personally just eyeball it, but um, I know for a fact that when I do pick colors, and if I'm actually paying attention enough to point it out more often, um, I usually pick colors that are either next to each other or like off colors of their complementary colors. For instance, the yellow there that I used, I actually went and grabbed a purple because purple's my favorite color, but also it works really well with shading and blending uh, anything that is yellow, just because it just makes the colors look more rich and just make them pop just a little bit more, especially the highlights if you use a complementary color as your shading tool. A lot of the techniques I kind of adopted from old styles of painting, and you can learn a lot from other mediums for digital artwork. A lot of people, or at least a lot of beginning artists, kind of, I see some having like a very snobbish attitude towards traditional artwork, and that's something that's very ignorant, I personally find, because if you show up your nose to like anything that is traditional artwork, then you probably don't really deserve to be doing digital artwork because you can learn so much from traditional artwork that like old masters have already learned from just like working with pigment. And then if you learn from pigment, for instance, you can just make your art pieces look that much more beautiful because you have that extra advantage of having digital artwork, such as like you have infinite amount of paint and you have infinite amounts of undos if you have your settings set that way. So yeah, like when it comes to digital artwork and anybody who's wanting to learn digital artwork, it's 100% okay, and I actually prefer that people learn at least one or two like traditional methods just in case, for instance, like your computer magically dies or like you're in a place where you can't use a digital tablet, such as like a train or like a subway or just like a variety of different ways that you can't use your laptop or if you have a desktop computer and you're going somewhere. Very important to know how to use at least some traditional media just so you can stay sane if you're an artist like myself who can't spend 2 hours or even 1 hour or even 15 minutes without drawing something within those 15 minutes. So be sure to at least give it a shot, or at least have a sketchbook on hand to doodle in if you are strictly a digital artist. Um, but yeah, like learning from traditional medium is extremely helpful, um, especially when learning colors and composition, because you have to think like just three steps ahead when you're doing traditional artwork, especially with something as unforgiving as inks. And it teaches you how to steady your hand and be more confident in your strokes and such like that. Another medium that I never expect to really help me when applying it to digital artwork, and this is just from personal experience, um, is photos. Uh, I took a black and white photography class, like the actual film version, and I learned so much about lighting and understanding composition and how to make light pop a little bit more, uh, just by understanding how black and white, just seeing everything in black and white worked. Like, I understood how values worked after taking that class. Like, it was amazing. It was just very eye-opening. It's something that I recommend anybody who is taking like any type of college courses and have the ability to take a photography class without it getting in the way or being too expensive or anything like that. Like, definitely try to take a photography class, a black and white photography class if you can. Even if you're just a digital artist, it can teach you a lot of fundamentals about how to set up composition, how to gain an eye for things, and always be looking for new details or like new opportunities when it comes to either drawing something from real life or just drawing something from fantasy and making it look more realistic. The best, I guess, teacher is nature and just the real world itself. That's always the best teacher, even though many people wouldn't really care to admit it. So if a book or like a fantasy book can teach you something, then real life can teach you something as well, and can probably teach you far more if you just learn the tools of how to just keep your eyes open and look at the real world at a different perspective than just what you see in front of you. Like looking at the colors or the shading of someone's face, like see that there's actually just that little hint of green or little hint of purple within just under the skin tone, and just being aware of how things are placed and set around you and why nature seems to be so fitting even though it sometimes looks chaotic, like trees, like tree branches and stuff like that. It all has a method to the madness, and overall, like when learning any type of new technique, just keep an open mind about it at first, give it a shot, and it'll just turn out for the better, even if you can't really achieve a particular style right away, or if you are just having trouble with that particular style and it's just not your cup of tea. You can always learn something from anything new that you try, as long as you at least try. And that's just a personal rule of thumb for myself. So other than that, I think that was a good topic. Again, this is a Patreon reward. You can become a supporter through Patreon. I'll be sure to leave those links down below. If you would like to see more artwork, I do have a website, and as well as you can see early access on the Patreon. Other than that, this reward is almost finished. I'm just doing the final touches of highlights and color adjustments. And this has been super fun, just chatting. Have any tips or tricks of improving my future videos? Feel free to leave a comment down below. Other than that, I think I'm going to let the rest of this video play out. Thank you for stopping by, guys. I hope you have a good one. See you next time.